Noon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I know some of you are coming to us from spring break, so I really appreciate those of you who I've seen who are out of office this week. Mhm. We are just letting people kind of connect right now. We're going to get started in about a minute. All right. So thank you all for joining us today. I am Allison Regalado. I am program director for NIPSE, National Post-Secondary Strategy Institute. I'm so excited to welcome you all to our second session of the FAFSA Focus series. Today is developing strategies to support all families. Just some engagement norms up on your screen right now. I think we're all pretty familiar with Zoom at this point, but if you could rename yourself to identify who you are, your organization, and your pronouns, that would be wonderful. We're going to use some pretty standard virtual meeting space etiquette. So mute if you're not speaking. It is a Zoom meeting and not a webinar. So if you come off mute, we're going to hear you. Use your chat function for questions and comments during presentations. Or if you want to come off mute and have a question or join in a conversation, just utilize that hand raise function so we don't have everybody coming off mute at once. Couple other norms for today is we really want to stay solution focused in our conversations. It is easy to devolve into all the problems we're seeing right now, but we're intentionally creating a space to try and problem solve and help address issues that are coming up. So we just want to make sure that we are really trying to problem solve today. And then I know everyone who is on this call has a ton of work to do supporting students, and I just ask that you be as engaged as you can be. I'm excited to have you here at all. We'll be following up with the presentation after this, but love to have you here. And this is going to work best if everyone's engaged and participating. So for the next hour, we're going to run through a quick overview of NIPSE, who we are and why we're having this series, the goals that we've set for this series. And then obviously the part I'm most excited about, we're going to get to hear from our partners at Chicago Public Schools and Breakthrough Central Texas to learn what they're doing and how they're supporting their families through FAFSA this year. We'll save some time at the end for an idea exchange, and then we'll do a quick wrap up and get you out the door. I'm really hoping you walk away with a lot of good information today and strategies you'll take back to your organization. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Joyce Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joyce Brown. I'm one of the NIPSE founders, and I want to add my welcome to the National Post-Secondary Strategy Institute webinar. Before beginning, please let me share just a little bit about NIPSE. We are a relatively new nonprofit that partners with school districts and college access organizations across the nation to help develop structured district-wide post-secondary advising systems, integrating three important components of the NIPSE model for post-secondary success. That would be leadership, a data strategy, and engaging school counselors as leaders. NIPSE model implementation is delivered with expert guidance through a lens of practitioner experience. We focus on the idea that belief brings change. When stakeholders have a believe mindset, positive change can happen for all students, especially underrepresented populations. The NIPSE aim always is to maximize post-secondary success for every student. The work of NIPSE is rooted in the word believe, and the NIPSE model is based on the work that the NIPSE founders did within Chicago Public Schools over 20 years ago when we helped establish the Department of College and Career Readiness. We were tasked with believing that we could implement structured strategies to ensure that over 500,000 students understood that college was possible for their life. Ironically, making up FAFSA tracking with our state partner was a strategy that we created and implemented. We are thrilled that several states across the nation have made FAFSA a graduation requirement and that others are implementing tracking strategies. On the next screen is the visual model of NIPSE, the NIPSE model for post-secondary success. Notice that student post-secondary success is at the center of the NIPSE model. Within each of the three NIPSE components, there is a belief mindset. Can you move to the next slide? Leadership is important to the model because leaders must structure and organize post-secondary strategies and have a clear plan for increasing post-secondary outcomes tied to measurable data points. A data strategy is important to the belief framework because districts must commit to using reliable data to inform strategy development and identify needed interventions. Finally, there must be a belief about the value of empowering school counselors to lead post-secondary access work, both in their schools and across the districts, and engage partners in the process. Counselors no longer must operate at the periphery of post-secondary advising and instead must have a clear role to position students on pathways leading to post-secondary opportunities at the end of high school. Leadership, data strategy, and school counselor engagement, those are the three fundamental structures of the NIPSE model, but we know that the work cannot take place with structures alone, and so we advance the following practices of the outer ring: collaboration, communication, relationships, and shared accountability for student success. The NIPSE team is always excited about the opportunity to work with others that embrace a vision of maximum post-secondary success for all. And we hope that after this webinar, you continue to reach out to us and engage with us. Thank you. Over to you, Allison.
Thanks, Joyce. All right, so the goals for our FAFSA Focus series are really to highlight and celebrate organizations that are proactively addressing challenges of the new FAFSA. So these are partners and folks who are sharing ideas, both presenters and folks who share their ideas in the chat. We really just want to appreciate the work they're doing and highlight it so that folks can take ideas back and apply it to their own orgs. We want to build a collaborative community, so we're really looking to create a space where you hopefully will connect with at least one other person to get a question answered or bring a new idea to light. And then finally, just compile some resources and strategies that we can share with others. And so everybody's attacking this new FAFSA on their own from their own district. But we really want to remember that it is a national struggle that we're seeing. Nationally, rates are down. And so really just want to come together, remember that we're not facing this alone, and share ideas so that folks are not just spinning their wheels. And with that, I am so excited to introduce Brian Harris, Director of College Pathways from the Chicago Public Schools, to tell us a little bit about what CPS is doing. I'm really excited to have my friend Brian here today.
Thanks, Allison. So as Allison mentioned, I'm Brian Harris. I'm Director of College Pathways with Chicago Public Schools. I'm not gonna obviously we're the fourth largest district in the country, as you can imagine. There's a lot of context that comes with my position, but in essence, I lead what we call the FACS team. So I support the strategies behind financial aid completion and college technical support. So it's college application submission, that sort of thing. Before I kind of jump into our strategies, it's really important to know the context within we're working, or that we're working within, right? CPS supports 112 high schools. We do also have a large number of charter schools and contract schools within the district, but I'm specifically today talking about the 112 that the district supports. So to give you context in terms of our student population, if CPS was one high school, then 80% of our students qualify for free reduced lunch, so classified as low income. So if we think of the NSC high school classifications, we are effectively one large high poverty high school. 85% of our students are Black or Latinx. So we are one large high minority high school as well. About 10 to 15% of students are undocumented. And that includes a large influx of newcomers. particularly within the past couple of years. And another quarter of our students, approximately, are from mixed status families, meaning the students are citizens and their parents, at least one parent is not. The other thing that is important to know about CPS is that there are a wide variety of high school types within our district, ranging from selective enrollment schools that are only accessible via a test score, certain test scores. We have neighborhood schools that students can attend based off of where they live geographically, and then we also have some hybrid options, um, where certain spots are allocated to students who live in a particular geographic area, and then certain programs within the school you have to test to get into. Next slide, please. Um, my position sits within the Office of School Counseling and Post-Secondary Advising. So we heard Joyce talk about the Department of College and Career Success, and so this is the current version of that Office of School Counseling and Post-Secondary Advising. And in our office, what we essentially do is provide guidance. So we are, for lack of a better term, an office with no teeth. We can't really provide directives to schools or principals, but we do provide guidance to the offices that in the entities that do have teeth, right? I've highlighted the Office of Network Support, which supervises our principals essentially, and then the principals obviously supervise our counselors and coaches, and we are the ones who are providing guidance and recommendations to those entities. And for the most, we have a great relationship with all of our stakeholders, and so typically, folks are in fact following our guidance. Next slide, please. Another important thing to know about CPS. So in general, Illinois is a state that does mandate FAFSA submission or financial aid submission for graduation, but that comes with a couple of caveats. One, we have our own state financial aid application called the alternative application. This is specifically for undocumented students who have been residents of Illinois and have attended an Illinois high school for 3 years. So that's important to know because those students don't show up in FAFSA submission or completion numbers since they're ineligible, but they do still complete financial aid. And then we also have a non-participation form available to any students and families who, for whatever reason, don't feel comfortable submitting a financial aid application. Next slide, please. Um, so Given our student population, as you can imagine, complexity is the norm. Working with low-income populations, working with a large number of undocumented students, mixed status families, we've seen every situation. Um, so going into this year, we anticipated the changes, and we weren't necessarily completely thrown off because we already our counselors and coaches on up to our office are kind of used to having to go the extra mile to support our students and families, right? Um, we we would typically what we would do is we encourage our schools to give out what we call essentially a senior census to figure out who falls in which category within your school. So which students are going to classify as undocumented, how many parents are undocumented. Obviously, historically, that meant like how many signature pages are we going to have to print and mail off, right? Who's dependent and independent? Who is what is the real parent contact information? If you're in an urban school district, if you're in a low income school district, you know our parents and families just got to get by the way they get by. And as a result, the information that they're going to give to the district and the school is not necessarily who is going to end up on that FAFSA. So one of the things we do is, all right, let's get that real information so you can get this money, right? And then we also want a red flag before the school year even starts. Who is going to be the complex tax situations? Who's claiming you? Um, who is your actual biological parent, right? Who is supposed to be claiming you, though, that sort of thing. And so linked in the deck are the planning tool and a sample form that we might submit to students to prepare for financial aid season in a standard year, but also something that that we've utilized even amidst the changes. Next slides, please. For this year, right, we know everything is chaotic. Our mantra has been keep calm to our practitioners. We feel that we are pretty a high level district in terms of the average level of competency amongst our practitioners, but because they're high level, it's also a high knowledge level, and so they know enough to know that there was something to worry about. And our mantra has been to model calm throughout the district, so that our students and families stay calm as well. Next slide, please. So we started in collaboration with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, which is kind of the state arm of post-secondary support within the state of Illinois. We started conducting trainings for counselors and coaches in preparation for the Better FAFSA all the way back in May 2023. So the previous school year, we started doing walkthroughs and had a regular cadence of trainings up until the FAFSA actually opened. During winter break, we actually opened up a few buildings to give students and families and also practitioners an opportunity to see what the application looked like. I don't need to get into all of the problems that were occurring at that time, right? But it was helpful even when we weren't able to complete an application, just so practitioners knew what they were getting into when students came back into the building. Um, we have something in our district called the College Compact, which is a collection of some of the highest CPS feeders. I should specify colleges who are high CPS feeders. And we brought them together to implement what we call the Financial Aid Symposium, which allowed our practitioners to get insight into uh, what was going on college campuses. This was on January 24th. And then, as many of you know, literally the next week, we got word that ICERs weren't going to be delivered to colleges and state agencies until mid-March, and so we kind of had to pivot. So pretty much since the end of January, what we've been doing is collecting information, consolidating it as best as we can, and distributing it out to our coaches and counselors in schools across the city. In the deck, I've linked the examples of the weekly updates that we've been sending out. That's been our primary medium for getting information out to schools. Next slide, please. Um, so, as most folks know, one of the sticking points has been how we as practitioners support mixed status families who have not been able to submit FAFSAs as of yet, right? So because of the nature of the population in our district, it caused a lot of panic at many of our schools. Some of our schools are up to 60, 70% either undocumented or mixed status families. Um, and so a lot of misinformation was being spread around. So our main task in central office has been to stop the misinformation, and make sure we have a unified message on what students and families can and should be doing right now. We took a more cautious approach as a district because with the ever-changing environment. We didn't want students and families to be taking actions that will set them back for the future. So, for instance, at one point, a lot of folks were really pushing for doing the paper FAFSA. We actually advised against it because we had no concrete evidence on when those would be processed, right? And Obviously relying on USPS, and there's a lot of uncertainty around it. So anytime there was uncertainty, we tried to promote this wait and see approach. And thus far, we think it's been successful. Next slide, please. Um, so the other uh, one of the other major components of our strategy was to not send all messaging, not to communicate with students and families directly from central office, because we're a large district, and it ends up becoming white noise. We wanted to send information to our schools, who then disseminated it out to students and families. Our schools are the ones with relationships with our students and families, and also can cater the messaging to their student population. And we found that has been most effective, as opposed to kind of coming on a high, going on social media saying this is the message from Chicago Public Schools that may not fit a particular student population. We've done we've invested a lot of time and energy into uh, using knowable cost to improve affordability advising, so leveraging net price calculators, collecting all of the automatic scholarships that we know students can know without seeing a financial aid award, and then helping our practitioners understand financial aid policies so that if you have family, if you know their SAI, they'll automatically, this may be their cost, or they may be have certain cost waived because of their SAI, right? That way, when families do get financial aid award letters, um, um, they won't be blindsided by the net cost that they see. Um, we know that many institutions that utilize the CSS profile this year are essentially foregoing the requirement, or at least until enrollment, to complete the FAFSA. And so we've done a lot of intentional training with our practitioners around supporting students in completing that CSS profile. Um, and then we have a pretty robust tracking mechanism, both centrally and on the school level, um, to get a sense of where we're at in terms of FAFSA submission, given that we don't have formal data yet. So we've been really leveraging the updates that Federal Student Aid sends out, and cross-checking with our internal data to get an idea of how many students have submitted the FAFSA at each school, and then disseminating that information to schools as well. Next slide. So all of that has resulted in the fact that we actually think we're in a pretty good place throughout all the chaos. Um, we feel pretty confident for where Chicago Public Schools is at, and obviously the context here is also that we have a student population who, one, is less likely to even be eligible to complete the FAFSA, and two, more likely to be affected by the changes of the FAFSA, right? So um, national estimates estimate that around 29% of students have submitted the FAFSA so far, and at low income schools, that estimate is around 25.5%. In CPS, our estimate is around 45% of schools. I do want to note that does exclude charter schools, which we don't support at the district level, but it also includes what we call option schools, which are alternative schools, um, which are schools that we don't really manage but provide peripheral support to. Um, but those schools are also less likely to have students submit the FAFSA, mostly as a result of the graduation status of those students is also in flux. So when you include all of that context, we're really proud of the work that our practitioners have done, and we feel pretty confident about the strategies that we've been utilizing. And I think that's it from me. I think there's maybe 2 minutes or so for any questions. Thank you for listening. Hopefully, some of it was helpful, and I'd be welcome to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. If you guys want to throw questions in the chat or come off mute and ask any questions or um, clarifications, I'd love to hear from you. All right. Brian, I do have a question for you. I mean, if no one else is going to ask, is um, what do you feel has been like the most impactful uh, kind of message you've put out to your practitioners this year?
The most impactful message is, I think, been around tiering um, the support that you're providing students. So don't get paralyzed by the frustration of not being able to support everyone in the way that we typically have. Get done what we can get done, and also ensuring that um, not that they won't be held accountable, but no one is going to. You're not going to get um, chastised by CPS leadership based off numbers, right? Which I think is something that our practitioners are often worried about. Like if they see like, oh, your school has 20% FAFSA submission, am I going to get fussed at by a principal or network leadership? But we've really shielded our practitioners from that so that they could focus on meaningful work. And I don't want to say, I was like almost ironically, what it is meant is that we are getting our numbers right. Is because we've been able to cultivate an environment for our practitioners to focus on meaningful work as opposed to just rush, try to get things done, just do, even though we don't have necessarily a concrete solution.
Thanks. I think that's really helpful to hear. I think when we were talking, you also mentioned sharing data with the practitioners ahead of sharing it with larger groups so that they could kind of manage conversations with their principals, but also take action as quickly as possible. Anybody else have any questions for Brian around CPS's FAFSA strategy this year? All right. If you guys think of anything, feel free to throw. Oh, we did. Avery Bennett threw it in the chat. She said, How have FAFSA completion efforts been structured? A mix of during school, after school. Where have your efforts been placed?
So for most school, I mean, it varies a little bit by school. Um, I would say for the majority of schools, the efforts have been during school, just because in full transparency with our student population, it's a little difficult to get our uh, parents to come to things after school. But we have had some schools that have held workshops on Saturdays or after school as well. And then our practitioners also provide flexibility to take appointments outside of school hours. But we've been most effective by being as flexible as possible within the school day. So I'll say that the school that within our district with the highest completion percentage, they have completed the FAFSA with all but one student at this point. And the way that they were able to do that, they didn't do any after school. They didn't do any weekend work. They allocated an entire week where the counselor was allowed to forego all the rest of her responsibilities and focus entirely on FAFSA completion. And so parents had the flexibility of coming in from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And there was no obstacles in the way for them coming in. So that flexibility was helpful.
It's a great question. Thank you, Brian, for that answer. Um, all right. If we have no other questions, I'm going to turn it over. Thank you, Brian, again for your time. It was great hearing you speak. If any questions come up while we're moving on, feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll have a little bit of time later to come back to them. But now we are going to hand it over to Kendra Strange and Christi from Breakthrough Central Texas.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're excited. Christy's going to share her screen to share the presentation for us today. So I'm excited. Breakthrough Central Texas here. We are a nonprofit college access organization in Central Texas, supporting students who will be the first in their family to go to college. And today we're going to talk about the benefits, the Band-Aids, and the bandages while we break through to better FAFSA. You can transition, Christi. So Breakthrough Central Texas, we create a path to and through college for students who become the first in their families to earn a degree. Our ultimate vision is to double the number of students in Central Texas who earn a bachelor's degree. A couple of statistics on Central Texas, only 3 out of 10 students from Central Texas actually graduate and receive a post-secondary degree. And also, if you take that number to low-income students, only about 18% of low-income students actually earn a post-secondary degree in 6 years. So there's a huge need across Central Texas to support students in their post-secondary endeavors. You can move forward. Breakthrough supports about 2,400 students across Central Texas in different grade levels ranging from middle school through college age students. And so we have two approaches to the work. Our first is our 12-year experience. So these are students that join us in 6th or 7th grade, and they stay with us they have a commitment, a long-term commitment, and we stay with them until they actually complete their degree or certificate or 24 years of age. And so this is a long-term commitment. So we work with students and families. As you see here on the screen, this is a student who's been with us and currently already graduated college and living his best life across the world. And so just showing our long-term commitment to students is one of our approaches. Our second approach is our school-wide approach, which we launched out about 4 years ago. And this is where we go into high schools and we support all juniors and all seniors. So we have a team that's located there on site. And they support all juniors and all seniors in their post-secondary endeavors. And so we provide direct advising to all those students, and then we support the school with improving the college readiness or post-secondary transition systems through what we call capacity building. And so those are our two approaches to the work, just a little bit about who we are and what we do. And so we support students in a multitude of pathways, a multitude of backgrounds. Just wanted to set the stage with that information. All right, so let's jump right into what we actually came here to talk about today. Despite the challenges, despite the band-aids, the bruises, and the bandages we've created, we do believe that there are benefits to the better FAFSA. You can transition to Christi. And those benefits are simple. The FAFSA is easier to complete for students and families. Despite the barriers of getting access, once students and families are able to get in there, it is very easy for them to complete. It does take less time to complete. We believe that will increase FAFSA completion over the next few years. It will be less stressful for families once we get through all of the challenges we're experiencing now. And then we also think it will improve completion accuracy. So despite the challenges, we know they exist. We want to start with the message that we do believe that the better FAFSA is better for students and families. The next piece I want to jump into are Band-Aids. So these are our strategies that we've been using to support our advisors as well as students and families. And these are small improvements or things that we've been doing in order to improve completion, but also to increase folks' capacity to be able to support more families. And so I want to jump into a few of our Band-Aids. I'm going to move quickly through these as I want to get to the meat of the presentation where we talk about those actual resources, and Christy's going to talk about that. So some of the Band-Aids that we use to support our advisors are simple, continuous and detailed training. And so that includes training at the beginning of the year where we talk about what is financial aid, and we go as deeply as walking through the entire financial aid application, as well as our Texas application. So in the state of Texas, we have a TASFA. It is our own state financial aid application to support our students that are undocumented, documented, or other citizens of the state of, other residents of the state of Texas. In addition to the FAFSA and the TASFA training, we're going to walk through specific student scenarios on how to complete it. So that's our training model that we train all of our advisors. One note, Breakthrough Central Texas advisors are made up of seasoned professionals as well as AmeriCorps members who are first job out of college. And so we go through extensive training. The other part, and I think Brian mentioned this, is sort of researching and sharing simplified updates to our team. We know that the news is happening and there are several updates being shared, and it does cause a little bit of confusion and chaos and stress. And so what we try to do is really share simplified versions of what we're hearing from our financial aid leaders like NCAN or the U.S. Department of Education and or USPIRE. If there are updates happening, we simplify them and we share them out to our team. We're going to be in constant communication with them. And that's if we hear something, we're sharing, hey, this is what we heard. Please wait. We're going to send out some simplified versions and what our response will be. And then providing the reassurance. I think during this time, one of the hardest pieces is like, as advisors and supporting students and families, we do not know all the answers, right? And so we want to provide reassurance for our staff and our advisors to say, hey, no, we don't have the answers, but we're committed to finding them and committed to staying with students for the long haul. One of the other things we do is co-advising. So when a student is meeting with a family, maybe you don't feel as confident because they have a challenging situation, maybe it's a mixed status family, we provide co-advising. So we bring in some of our stronger seasoned professionals. They sit with our advisors and support them when they're working with a student and or a family. And then we want to bring the fun back into, financial aid is hard. Texas 2 years ago moved to have financial aid as a graduation requirement. We're excited about that access that is opening up for students, but this year's been stressful. So we have internal competitions amongst our teams, and we're setting modest goals, but it's around keeping them excited and engaged and excited about like what we're doing to support students and families. And I think one of the biggest things we're doing is like downgrading and adjusting timelines and programs. And so that might mean we're not going to do 72 programs at the end of the year. We're going to really focus in on financial aid, and then we're adjusting timelines. We have what's called senior launch meetings. These are meetings where we meet with every individual student and their family, and we discuss their financial aid awards from every college, their financial aid offers, and we go through every individual acceptance with them. Unfortunately, without financial aid offers, we can't do those meetings. And so we've adjusted our timeline to now support students and families throughout June and July, which we already do, but extending our handshake to where our high school team actually still supports students transitioning in June. And then we test the workarounds. So there have been several workarounds that have been publicized and sent out. We actually sit down, test them, and then we simplify the process and we send out that information to our advisors. We offer time for them to sit with us to learn how to do the workaround. And then, of course, sharing best practices really helps. If you're working with a student and learning something new, like incognito mode, which Christi will talk about later, how that's impacted students being able to submit the FAFSA. And so sharing those best practices. All right, more Band-Aids. So we have some Band-Aids that we are using to support our students and families. And I think the biggest lever is one-on-one advising. And I know that not everyone can do this due to manpower and the amount of students that some districts or even programs are serving. But we do focus in on one-on-one advising so that we can get to individualized completion support. We recognize that every student and family has their own unique situation, and we want to make sure that we're helping them with the right tools and the right things that they need. And so we really pride ourselves on that one-to-one advising. The next thing we do is sort of having partnerships, right? We're finding that many of our students that might be in mixed status family households or undocumented or documented students might need support with completion of their taxes. And we want to be able to support them. Our team is not trained on tax support, so we have a partnership that supports them with tax completion. And that might be something that folks can do, is reach out to local tax organizations and see if they're willing to come into a financial aid night to support students and families that have those challenging financial situations. The second part of that is legal aid. Maybe there's a concern with a family's legal status, and we're not trained to do that. So we set up partnerships with law firms that support families that might be in different situations, and we provide that legal aid to them. The next one is meeting students and families where they are. That might mean a home visit. That might mean on Zoom while mom is at lunch. That might mean meeting them at Starbucks on a Saturday, but we really want to meet students where they are. This week is spring break for most of our staff, and so we are actually set up at coffee shops and McDonald's and our own office, and have office hours for students and families to walk in with their documents, and we can actually support them to complete their FAFSA. We also provide document storage, so that's getting copies of families' W-2s, tax transcripts, in preparation for verification, and also in preparation in case a student or family loses the document. We've already made copies of it and we're able to support them. Same as for our advisors as our families, that constant and simplified communication. And I think Brian talked a little bit about this, is there are so many messages going out. Families are getting scared. I'm on Facebook, I'm seeing outrage, people posting things, and it gets very frustrating for families. So we really try to listen, simplify the message, and resend it out. And then, of course, providing that reassurance. Yes, this is happening across the world for lots of students. We're aware. This is what the Department of Education is doing. This is what, the financial aid department is doing, and trying to inform them of what's happening around them and what their part is and what they should be worried about, and not necessarily concern themselves with. And then early prep for verification, which I mentioned. And then the biggest one is follow up, follow up, follow up. We don't hand families a list of things to do and let them walk away from us. We take that and we're going to follow up and say, hey, did you complete step 1? Or I'm going to sit with you to do steps 1 through 5. You're responsible for 6. I'm going to check in with you on 7, 8, and 9. And follow up is like the biggest driver here, because many of the workarounds do require the student to go back in and do something additional. And if we're being honest and being frank, students may not remember, families may not remember. So we have to have a system so that we can follow up. Those are all the Band-Aids we have. The next piece of the presentation is around bandages. And these are the resources we've developed to support our advisors for supporting students and families. And I'll toss it over to Christi.
Thank you, Kendra. So currently, y'all, we have about 400 students across 3 partner districts. and surrounding schools in Central Texas. Our students are both in our partner districts and outside. So I'm going to start with the easiest one to follow. For those of you on the call, we have a student-facing FAFSA completion checklist that you're welcome to take the QR code, make it your own. This is in English and in Spanish because of our we have a high population of Spanish speakers at home, and so it just goes down the list of like have you created your FSA ID? Has the contributor, so forth, and then that optional making copies of their tax documents. They opt into that, and optional to request their tax transcripts. So that's one that I'm going to leave for y'all there. You can take the picture, or sorry, use your phone to get that using the QR code. And then the second one that I have, or once you have the presentation, this one have we get updates from, like Kendra said, from FSA, from NCAN, from our partner districts of like what issues we're seeing, what are the official reported challenges and things like that. So we have this is just mine that I'm sharing. This is one that I try to update as much as possible. The first page 1 and 2 have issues or updates that have been reported out. Some considerations, some links, we have a high population of mixed status household. So, getting that attestation form, getting those FSA IDs verified, that's a big part of our piece on the ground. So you'll see that at the top page. Some of them that are crossed out are things that are no longer an issue. And as much as I can, I just try to update the team on this. And then the second page is pages 3 and 4 kind of talk about like what has worked for our staff, because it's just like, what it's like, well, what did you try doing this? Did you try doing that? For example, going into incognito mode or deleting your cookies or trying a different computer, trying a different Wi-Fi may get you to submit. So just as simple as that. Getting through FSA or FISAC, the Information Center, getting a hold of somebody sometimes is hard. So we've seen that it's been very successful to have sending an email to FISAC or the Student Contact Center and getting a response there. With the unique or weird situations that are not really part of the big story. And then you'll see other ones where, like, for example, if going around the contributors, I'm not going to go into detail with that. I am going to leave that for y'all to see, because I have a little bit of time. And then the last resource that I have for y'all is a very heavy Google spreadsheet. We have our own database that we use through the Salesforce platform, but because of the temporary issues that we hope are resolved by next school year, we've reverted back to Google spreadsheets to kind of see where our students are in the process. So I'm going to overview that right now. Okay, so heavy looking, right? So you'll see first at the bottom, I have a couple different tabs, and that's representing my 6 teams across the different districts. Our student distribution looks different for each team. Some may have 30 plus students, some may have just 4 students. So what you'll see if you click on the Austin High School team tab is first, who is the advisor? And those are just random initials that I have for y'all here. Take out student name, and then you'll see a drop down pick list to see where the student is at. As Kendra mentioned, we have our state financial aid, our TASFA, for our undocumented, documented students. So, knowing where they're at, maybe they were stuck on the glitch where you couldn't, there's a mixed status household for one parent has a social, but the other parent does not, and you couldn't click past. So now that issue has been resolved. And so we're, having following up with those families is easy to track here because we know which ones had those glitches. And then we have our students who, and so forth. You'll also see we're tracking our students who are getting have an exemption because it is a graduation requirement, or getting a waiver, which is also, or, in progress of getting that waiver, getting that exemption. This is the most important column that we track, but we also included, whether a student has an FSA ID, whether a contributor, whether there was an attestation form, has the student signed, has the contributor signed, and then we have had some luck with some applications getting processed as early as last week, actually early as February. So you'll see the same thing across the different tabs there for your teams, using a whole bunch of formulas and data validation. I think I have just like one more minute. Let me know, team, yep, I have my timer went off. So I'm just gonna wrap up here. So this all connects to our summary tab, using again data validation and formulas. If you're unfamiliar, let me point you to YouTube University or Googling how to do this. That's how I taught myself and teach the team to do it. But up here, you'll be able to see progress by advisor. And then I'm able to see who has been exempted or who has signed and the percentage by advisor, and by scenario. And then at the bottom, I have, okay, by team, what are we looking at? And we're excited to, share that we are at more than 50% completion, signed and submitted, right? That's different from processed. But for our Texas State grant deadline, submission is what we're trying to get. So I know I went through that really fast. I know that this is a template and examples. And if you're not familiar with data validation or Google formulas, this might be a little bit hard. You can go ahead and delete all of those formulas and enter your things manually, but I hope they help you all, or maybe a team member. Thank you.
Christi, if you want to go to the last slide, that has our contact details.
Oh, sorry.
You're fine. The impact of the resources, we're over 50% completion. We know statewide, nationwide, it's down, 40% or so. And so we're happy to report we're seeing an uptick with the workarounds. They're working. We don't have a magic bullet, although we wish we did. We have a lot of different things we're doing to impact FAFSA completion, and would love to take any questions that you guys have for us today.
This is Maura Lee from NCAN. Maybe it's on there because you got a lot of columns in your spreadsheet, which I'm wildly impressed with. So congratulations on that. But for your ones that are signed and submitted, are you tracking what their confirmation email said to them? Like, did everybody get an SAI, or are there people who submitted that don't have an SAI, so that you'll know to follow up with them when they will be allowed to do corrections at the end of the month?
Thank you, Maura Lee. Yes, we're tracking that through processed applications. So sign and submission will be different from processed, and we'll be adding another column that says student aid index. Yes.
And we do request copies of that student aid index. If and when anybody receives it, we do have document storage to upload this as well, so that we have it. And that's part of our long-term commitment. So they're going to be, many of our students choose to stay with us for the 6 years after graduation. And so we want to have that documentation to support them with future FAFSA submissions.
Christina and Kendra, thank you for all of your insight and resources. Janine from Michigan College Access Network, question about how the data is collected. Is it the intention that every advisor is sitting with that student, looking at evidence of submission and then completing that spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay.
Evidence being the key word, because students will say, yeah, I submitted it.
Right.
Let me see the email you got, anything that you have.
Let's log in.
Then do they have specific, are they pulling kids out of classes? How are they getting in front of the students?
So I will say for our school-wide program, we're housed on campus. And so there's a team of, at each campus, 6 advisors. And so they're there all day. And so they have access to pull them. For our 12-year experience, they're coming in to visit campus. They might meet with students during the school day. And also after school and or home visits are a part of our 12-year experience. So for our school-wide team that's on campus, yes, we're pulling students from class. We have permission to do so from elective courses, advisory. We're also staying before and after school to support students and families as well.
Yes, we have one going on right now during spring break.
Thank you both for all the information and for sharing the resources. All the resources Kendra and Christi provided will be shared out following this presentation, as well as the resources linked in the CPS presentation. So you guys will have access to everything that has been shared thus far. Any other questions for Kendra, Christi, or Brian still on the call? All right, wonderful. And so we have a few minutes left of our time together. And I'd love to hear from more of you on the call. And we have some prompts, some discussion prompts up here. Don't feel limited by these, but we'd love to have folks come off mic, share their name and title, and maybe some of the strategies that they're taking away from today or that resonated with them. Or how do the current strategies discussed align or differ from current FAFSA completion practices? Was there something you guys heard that maybe you're kind of doing, but you've tweaked it and done it your own way? Um, just looking for folks to share kind of what's working, or even, if you want to come off mute and say, hey, I have this question that didn't get answered. We'd love to hear that as well. I just saw published from NCAN FAFSA year over year FAFSAs are down by 34%. So, really curious to hear what's going on with you all on this call. Love to hear from you all.
I'll kick us off and just share one note that I didn't say is that we actually shared the research and findings with all of our district partners. So like, as we're simplifying this communication, I also send this out to our CCMR leads at our campuses and say, hey, not sure if you saw this, here's what we're sharing with our team. And then also offering up training for any staff that are supporting students, because we recognize not everybody has the capacity to be able to go to all the webinars and all the trainings. And so we really try to share that feedback back with our district partners so that they can then share it out with their counselors and or other CCMR folks that are in their district to support completion across all of our, partner districts.
I have a quick question. Janine, High School Innovation Director at Michigan College Access Network. Is anyone comparing from when the FAFSA originally came out in January in previous years? Has anyone been able to find the data to see how well or how different or how aligned the data is currently?
Janine, you're saying comparing last year's progress to this year's progress?
No, when FAFSA came out in January in a previous years, just wondering if it is similar in terms of data as this year, because this year again is January. So comparing to last year's not going to be the same, but comparing to January rollout back in the day, wondering if anyone has had access to that and has compared that.
Nationwide, I don't think I have access or have that bullet point, but for within programs, last year and past years, the FAFSA has opened in October. So we have noticed a major decrease in completion, given the amount of weeks that the FAFSA has been opened. There's a drastic difference in completion.
I was just going to add, Janine, I think that's an amazing question to ask, especially, back in the day when it opened in January, folks had not filed their taxes yet. So there was also that gap in completion. I'd be curious to also see if anybody's able to compare and see if we're on target with what it was happening in January or not. I don't know. I won't even give idea what I think. I would love to kind of see that same data too, Janine. So maybe Marley and Ken, I'm going to,
Yeah. We have, the tracker that we've done is we only have the data back to the year when it started to open in October. We do not have data files prior to it opening in October. It's a great question. I can tell you I've been around a long time. My gut would be we are still behind, even for a January opening on submissions, and we're of course, drastically behind on the institution side in terms of being able to process. So, but I don't know, we could maybe do a data request out of federal student aid to look back, but we have only got data files back since October 1 of 17 when it opened.
But the only thing I'll add is obviously, just like everybody else, we don't have access to the data from when FAFSA used to open in January, but what we have done is compare the rate of completion by like how many weeks it has been open. So like comparing our March 1st completion numbers with like our December 1st completion numbers from last year. And we did find that naturally the rates of completion this year are a little faster because people feel that sense of urgency. But that has been a little bit useful for us in terms of adding context to our numbers.
Thanks, Brian.
Does anyone offhand know the year it switched from January to October? Because Brian, you might not have it offhand, but if it's helpful to look back, CPS has been running FAFSA since I think before then.
It was October 1, 2017.
2017. Okay. Dig back in my old CPS stuff and see if I can find an old public report from 2016. Anybody else have information, a goal that they're setting for their team or a way they are looking to improve their FAFSA completion rates this year?
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Brower. I'm with the Richmond Public Schools Education Foundation in Virginia. I just want to comment on what Brian said earlier about not stressing out our teams with the numbers if they're not, not meeting those goals. I think that's important to understand that, there are people behind these numbers and that our leaders sometimes forget that. They just want to see the metrics, which I understand because they want to see that the work is being done. But it's important to understand that these are different times that we've seen, as people have said. So also, as far as the flexibility of when to do the FAFSA, we do have a large percentage of students who are non-English speakers as well too. So a lot of times, and other parents as well too, sometimes can't even get in during those school day hours. So we will have opportunities after school for parents to come. And in the really extreme case, we will go to someone's house to do a FAFSA with them with permission from the family to come into their home. So that's definitely been helpful in that case for us as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a great point. All right. Anyone else have anything they want to share? Give it another second.
I see a question around our tax support partnership. And so we've partnered with a tax service that focuses on helping families, whether that be, hey, I've never submitted my taxes, my student's a senior, lots of different challenging situations. And we found that our advisors are kind of stuck. Like, how do I help this family, right? My training doesn't go that far. And so we actually research, and it's actually one of our families, student who's been a part of our breakthrough program. Family runs a tax service business, and they actually support student families with whether that be they're filing with a TIN number, a tax identification number. So they support them with this. And so essentially we set up a partnership with them, and we can support students at any grade level. And so we set a number of hours, I think, Christi, with that organization on how they support students. Or it's like every student that goes through and asks for support, they set a fee, and we cover that fee for those families that are receiving support. And so it's a modest part of our budget, but we find that the impact is greater than the cost that we're actually spending. And they set a small costs or fee that they use to support families. And then they're able to kind of follow up and work with them through the whole process. And we really give our advisors a chance to increase their capacity and say, this is not my specialty, but let me connect you with Jaime's tax service, who's going to support you in completing your taxes and getting all the documentation we need to complete your FAFSA. Hopefully that answers your question.
Right. Well, we are very close to end of time. Thank you so much, Brian, Kendra, Christi. Appreciate all of you, your time, your effort, and all the amazing work you're doing with students. Thank you so much for being here today. Again, as I said, the presentation will be shared, so all the resources that they have graciously provided will be sent to you all today, later today. Just a quick a few quick wrap-up items. So if you are looking for more FAFSA support, NIPSEA is available to help you strengthen your FAFSA completion strategies this year. We'll be sending out more information shortly about opportunities to work with us to work on your FAFSA completion plans. But in the meantime, if you're interested, reach out to us at info@nipsey.org. We have one more session in our NIPSEA Focus series, our NIPSEA FAFSA Focus series. It's next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central. And we're going to be focusing on building partnerships for district success. So we're going to be hearing from National Louis University and the innovative work that they're doing to support college FAFSA completion. Ooh. And then we're also going to be hearing from Michelle Howard, who is working at Hope Chicago, a partner who works with Chicago Public Schools and universities nationwide. Yes, Michelle Howard is absolutely a superstar. I saw that pop up in the chat. So really excited to hear from this group next week. If you haven't already registered, we'll be sending out the information on how to register next week. It's also available in the chat. And then finally, as you exit, please complete the survey. Help us improve for the next session. We really appreciate any feedback. And that's it. Thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate your time and looking forward to seeing you next week.